Hi, everyone. We are going live today with Intercultural Coach Claudia Elias. My name is Batul Sadik. I'm an image consultant and personal stylist. And today's topic is so fascinating to me that I had to ask my dear friend and colleague Claudia to join us to talk about all things culture and style. We will be presenting a full workshop on this on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so do make sure you join us for that. But today, Claudia, I wanted to get to know you. I wanted to introduce you to my audience so that they can see how much of a wealth of knowledge you are and how many insights you have to provide. I know the first time I met you, I think our conversation went on for a good 2-3 hours about all the things. And I actually always like to share kind of how we met whenever I have someone to come on to have a really nice discussion. And do you want to tell that story, or am I going to tell that story?
I think you nail it every time. So,
as a personal stylist, what I've learned with all the women I've worked with in different industries, from politics to media to corporate executives, rising leaders, is that it's not only dressing in a way that resonates with us, right? When we dress, we want to dress within context, and what I like to call styling with purpose. And so what I found in this increasingly global professional landscape is that understanding cultural intelligence is extremely important, knowing that cultural context. So if I am traveling to other parts of the world, I'm leading teams, we're on Zoom calls with people from all over the world, or even here locally where we are, when we're addressing diverse teams. What are we looking to accomplish, and how can we use our image and style to make sure it is in alignment with that image and executive presence that we talk about so frequently? And I know these terms are oftentimes thrown around. And so I was really looking for someone who understood that cultural context, who had the experience, who lived in the countries, who's worked with people from all over the world. And our meeting was accidental because I actually thought that I was connecting with someone else.
yeah.
And I reached out, we connected, you were wonderful, we had a great discussion. And the person who had referred me, when I went back to them, I said, thank you so much for introducing me to Claudia. She's fantastic and she's so knowledgeable. And they looked at me and they said, who's Claudia? You mean Diane? And I was like, who's Diane? And so I never got a chance to meet Diane, but I'm so happy that I got a chance to meet you.
I hope we meet her one day. So she's probably cool too.
I'm sure she is, and I hope she joins us one day as well. But really going back to that idea of what is cultural intelligence and how do we really build our cultural intelligence and cultivate that so we can use it to serve us in a professional setting and otherwise. And so I really wanted to start off with kind of learning more about what drove you to this space and what inspired you to take on this line of work, which is non-traditional.
This story is so interesting, like my journey, because I think about it a lot like how Steve Jobs talks about connecting the dots backwards. And I think that's what my journey 100% was. I was born in an immigrant family from the US, but a very recent immigrant. So there's so much of our cultural identity that was part of us and part of my growing up experience. But then I knew how to do this. I knew how to be culturally intelligent without knowing what the word was, because I was constantly changing my attitude, my behaviors, depending on where I was and who I was with. I knew that my friends had a completely different upbringing than I did. And it was just something that I could adjust to all the time. But it started becoming something more professional once I started to not only go through leadership training, which I did during college, and teach leaders, but I went abroad and I started to have that curiosity for the world and have an intentional experience of encountering other cultures and wanting to know how people behave, why they behave that way, and then how I can bridge the gap. And it happened so naturally. I think my personality, just in that curiosity of others and a desire to learn, allowed me to now learn about others, whether I was in China, whether I was in a Spanish-speaking country, and it kind of developed over time, right? I went through an environment where I was a little bit more comfortable with, and then grew into places and peoples that were very different than mine. But then, had an opportunity to begin coaching others on building these skills through, professional business settings. And then about being a language teacher, I think is what actually sparked the deeper interest, because when you're teaching language, you're always asking yourself, how are we giving our message and how are we getting understood? And so when you have language, it is so much about culture too. And I noticed how many people had lost that understanding of each other, because even though they were using the same words, they just couldn't get what they wanted to get across. And that could have been not just what they're saying, but how they're acting, what they're wearing, their demeanor with others. So my journey is kind of all over the place, but I think it was something where I suddenly looked back and I saw, wow, I suddenly know not only how to deal with people or know about them, but I know how to be with them and how to bridge the gap for others. And so part of what I'm trying to do now is build that connection and teach these skills that in many ways become like a second language for us, for those who have grown up constantly switching between cultural groups. We kind of know this language, but now we're here, cultural intelligence, it's all about teaching others who haven't had that to start to do that in a very shortened time, right? Because my journey took my whole life to get to the point where I am now, and now we can deliver that to others in the course of a few sessions, and they can really jumpstart that experience and that journey.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that you have lived in different parts of the world. And it's not just so much, let me sit back and study a culture from far away, but really immersing yourself in that environment. And I think one of the things that I've learned, and I know you shared as well, is you see how much frustration that a lack of understanding in communication between groups can cause. And so just to take a step back, if you can share, and I know we'll go more into this in our presentation on Wednesday when we're teaching about cultural intelligence and executive presence, but if you can really just define what is cultural intelligence and why do I care? Why does it matter to me?
100%, yeah. So it's, the term cultural intelligence is very similar to the term that we use for emotional intelligence. It's a type of social skill, but it's a specific type of skill that is an awareness of cultural groups and how they act and your behaviors to it. So number one, the definition begins with the knowledge. We know about cultures. We know about the things like, okay, their art, their music, but not just that, the deeper levels. We understand what their values are. We know we can name it, we understand that certain groups have more of a hierarchical system, and we can see it and recognize it. So we know it, we recognize it, and then the third part is we are able to adapt and adjust our behavior to the different settings that we're in. We're able to adjust our communication style. We're able to kind of adjust our approach and how we talk to people in our presentations, in what we wear, while still being ourselves. And that's really the key, is to know how to work with different groups, with different communities, individuals in those situations. So it's not just something far away and removed or a bunch of theories, right? A book. It's an actual person that we deal with. It's an actual conversation that we have. And being in the moment to adjust. It's almost like, if you're an actor and you can't remember your lines, it's not about the lines, it's about, can you improv there?
Okay. And so the two words you've used that really kind of piqued my interest is, one is adaptability.
100%.
Right? That adaptability, but also authenticity.
Yep.
How do we remain authentic and true to ourselves while also understanding the cultural context that we are in when we're at a board meeting or when we're visiting, vendors overseas or whatever a line of work may be. So adaptability and authenticity. And I know you will talk about this cultural cocktail. And how much of it is individual interactions, how much of it is influenced by the host culture or the culture in which person or people were raised, and all of that. And so it's interesting how your experiences in teaching, and language and all of that led you to realize where there was a breakdown in communication among different groups, and this desire to really want to build bridges,
Yes.
to create understanding, and from a professional perspective, how to really increase efficiency, reduce frustration, and any issues in the workplace that might arise just out of a lack of awareness, right? Not even intentional. And so from an individual level and at a corporate or business level, the importance and value to that. And then you decided to step into the coaching space.
Right.
Right. And so tell me a little bit, what do you find to be so rewarding about those experiences and the breakthroughs you have with your clients when you're coaching them? And if you can give an example maybe of a success story to share with all of us.
For sure. So, the coaching experience for me is working with people in their situation, right? So instead of knowing all these theories and which I do think is very important, you do have to have a foundation. But when you can work with someone, you can see them work through the journey that you went through, and you can see kind of that light bulb go off, and it's like the doorways start to open for them, and they make those connections, and then they can achieve those goals, and all that frustration that was built up inside for many years are maybe many years are totally gone because they have someone to walk with them. So for me, it's exciting because I can see them break through. And the fact of the matter is, the more of us that have this cultural awareness and this cultural intelligence, the more we're going to have so much more peace, to be honest, like, because we can work better with each other. We can have more understanding when we approach situations instead of jumping to conclusions. And so when you coach someone through it, you can see them, instead of getting so frustrated and not understanding, you can see them say, wow, like, I feel capable now. I feel confident now. I can do this. This is not something that is scary anymore. There's not something not approachable. This is not something that's like, oh, I have to just deal with this person from over there and I just don't know how to do it. It starts to open up their world, and then, you're making someone's life easier on all sides. And that's really what I want to do. I see it like a mission, I see it like a mission to help people grow and understand. I mean, a success story, I can tell you, I had this one client who was just really resisting the change, just really resisting that process of growth. But it is a process. And I remember, I need to be really patient with them. They need to be patient with themselves, which is a big part of it. Being patient with ourselves through the journey, and also recognizing that you can still think the way you think and go into someone else's shoes, into that different cultural framework, and recognize that this is the way they are and this is the way that they operate. And you know what? Let me see what they have that's good and that we can bridge the gap. How can we help each other, as opposed to thinking we're so different and now we can't work it out. No, let's figure out what your skills are. What can you do well? And then they can work it out. And so one of my clients really started to see, oh my gosh, for the longest time I was so critical. But now I see this different cultural group as, that's actually that's a good aspect. You know what? They might be more laid back, but hey, they can enjoy life and take a break so that then when they go back to work, they can work really hard, for example.
More productive.
Exactly. What is productivity, And so it was that growth of appreciation for the other. And then an ability to say, it's okay, even though my client was very scared to approach these new situations. I said, take it one step at a time. It's a lot about it. It's a mental battle of saying, it's okay to make mistakes and we're going to grow from it. But having the right tools and the right people to work with you allows that, something that seems daunting or something that's very difficult to become much easier, because now we can identify the issues and we can actually grow through it, And so for me, it's just really rewarding to see someone get through something that I've always known, and it's something that I can now give to others and they can accomplish it. So it doesn't become like, oh, people are just lucky and they can figure it out. No, this is actually strategy. Like, we build strategies so that you can go from, having lived your whole life in one cultural group, understanding one form of behavior, to being able to adjust your approach and work with those that you feel like are so different. And in many ways they are, but we learn the differences so that we can come together in the end. And that's the whole goal.
Excellent.
You
And
know?
so through their coaching experience with you, you're actually able to help them fast track and
100%.
navigate and
Oh, yeah.
strategize through that process of getting to cultural awareness and then learning how to convert that into cultural intelligence in the
Mhm.
different settings. But beyond that, you're almost teaching them how to lead in their
Oh,
role.
yes. It is
Right,
very much a
because
leadership
in the
training.
example you gave, your client was able to identify the strengths
Mhm.
instead of being critical of what they felt were the apparent weaknesses, for example, when really that was not the case. But in being able to identify the strengths and being able to place those individuals in roles where they will shine and setting
Mhm.
them up for success rather than failure,
Yes.
everybody wins in that situation,
Everybody wins.
right? And
Mhm.
so it's almost building your leadership acumen at the
100%. I mean,
time.
yeah. Yeah, like following up with that, before I even went into this world of intercultural intelligence, cultural intelligence, I was a leadership coach for a long time, and I would take students and different people into the backcountry, and we would teach them leadership through that experience. And so it wasn't really about backpacking and knowing how to hunt, but it was learning how we can communicate, how we can lead people through a lot of struggles and diversity and just adversity and all these different difficulties. And so what's really cool for me to see when you do cultural intelligence, you are 100% building off those same core foundations of what it means to be a leader, but you allow yourself to have the dimension of cultural variance, right? So
Mhm.
the way I lead when I'm with a Chinese in general or with Egyptians in general, it's going to be a slightly different approach. So we can learn all these leadership skills and we can practice them. But guess what? With these different groups or different individuals, we're going to have to adjust our style. And as a leader, you're not really changing yourself essentially, really. You're just adjusting the way you work with people. And 100%, it's something that, we have to stretch those muscles. But if you just work it out a little bit, you'd be surprised what you can do. So that's
Absolutely.
the thing.
And
Yeah.
so I know we've talked about the challenges that our clients face and that people face when it comes to cultural awareness and adapting to these different business settings
Mhm.
where there are diverse teams and we're meeting and greeting with people coming from backgrounds different than us. And one of those challenges is confusing cultural awareness with stereotyping,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
being cognizant of we're not here to label, we're not here to stereotype, but we're really here to create a context of awareness so we can be informed when approaching individual situations. And
Mhm.
so typically, what challenges do you see professionals facing when they are in these culturally diverse business settings?
Yeah, that's a great question and something that I get a lot. The biggest challenge is when people start to learn this information, they gain cultural knowledge about groups of people, and they start to apply it to the whole. So the purpose of this training is not to say that every single person in that cultural group will act that way. It's to say that these are certain norms that are more likely to happen. And it's almost like a prototype of what we could say is a person. But each individual is different. Each individual is influenced to a certain degree or less by their cultural group. And that depends a lot of times on how much they are mixed with others or have
Mhm.
influence on others. We don't know their life. We don't know their story. You know,
Yeah.
when someone says I'm American and then they get to know me, like when I was overseas, they would hear I was American, especially in Europe, and they were very shocked, to hear that I was American. And I would always ask them why, like, oh, well, you don't fit into the box of what I think an American is.
Okay.
And it's really interesting because I'm sure them and us, we all have our cultural awareness, our understanding through different things like media, through hearsay, right? And we don't necessarily have like a coach or a trainer that has actually lived there, experienced the people there
Sure.
and everything to actually guide us through. Well, that's maybe not as accurate but
Mhm.
another thing I wanted to say is people get stuck in these like, this is the group of people norm. This is their rule. This is the kind of the prototype, and then they start to apply it to every situation and every individual, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to just give you some guidelines so that when you're in a situation with that person that's from that group, if things come up, you're going to know what are the cultural things. What are those things, like in how I communicate? I know that in general, Southern Europeans are more direct, in how they communicate.
Sure.
Like, I lived in Spain for a while, and I know Spaniards are a lot more direct with what they want and what they don't like. And so I know that I can be more like that. and I think in general, are you going to meet someone whose Spanish is more indirect? Yes, but in general, the culture accepts more of a direct way of dealing with things. So if I'm all very indirect with them all the time as a whole group, and I feel people are so mean and demanding here, like, I'm gonna know, like, it's probably a cultural thing that they're so direct and so,
Sure. And I think one of the interesting things that I've learned, being from the American culture, is that we tend to be very direct in our communication as well, right? So if we have a meeting at 9 a.m., the meeting is at 9 a.m. It's not at 9:15 or 9:30. And yet when it comes to giving feedback, we may not be as direct. We may kind of first throw in some compliments and then ease into the constructive criticism. And so that also matters, right? What is the context of the conversation and how direct or indirect we're being?
We need the context. If we're not going through this, understanding the context and the situation, we're not going to really know how to do this. It's like reading the theory of like algebra, but doing calculus and actually being an engineer is very different, So I think that's the problem, is people think, oh, I can just read it in a book, or I can understand this general information, but they're not addressing each situation. I think that's why stories is one of the best ways that we can do to learn this stuff. And I even think that you don't need to know everything about every culture. You need to just understand these types of questions, these types of strategies to deal with situations that are cross-cultural, because you know what the questions are. Like, I've never been to, let's say, Philippines. I've never been to the Philippines, but I know with the cultural intelligence strategies that I can become friends with a Filipino because I've developed certain techniques. We've developed it through cultural intelligence. It will help you know how to ask the right questions, build a strategy to start to get to know them and make connections with a Filipino. You know what I'm trying to say?
That was going to be my next question, right? So we know what the challenges are, right? Like, we're going into a meeting with someone in a different part of the world, right? We're on a business trip. What do we do? How do we greet them? What is appropriate? What is inappropriate? What will be received well? What will not be received well? So yeah, the challenges are there. But when it comes to helping navigate these challenges, what I'm hearing from you is that you really have guidelines and a
100%.
framework in place. So if I know these are the guidelines, whether, there is time flexibility or not, generally speaking, how direct or indirect our communication is, how we give and receive feedback, whether it's one-on-one or in larger groups. What is the hierarchy, right? I know these are some of the framework things that I've learned from you through our discussions. And so it seems like what you do to help guide is more comprehensive versus, okay, this is one issue you're having, let's address that issue. The idea is to set people up for long-term success
100%.
as they grow professionally.
Yeah, because the thing is, true leadership is being able to recognize it in all situations, all patterns. You start to see the pattern, but you need to know, how do I even look? Like, how do I look at the situation? So that's what we're really trying to do here, is how to get you to look in the right way. I mean, we do need knowledge. We do need cultural knowledge. I think those things are important, like knowing how people greet and how people treat time. We need to have that information, but that information is not going to tell you what to do in this situation. So that's what we're trying to grow, is when we have those frameworks, then we're able to deal with it on our own and very confidently, and also having this sense of, this is a journey and this takes time. So you have to be patient with yourself through the process,
Sure.
But the framework is definitely going to set you up to go and approach the your own life, your own situations, and walk with a sense of, I guess, a sense of dignity and a sense of I'm learning and growing throughout every circumstance. And I'm acknowledging that, I'm recording that, and I'm reflecting on that, because that's a huge thing. This is not something where I can just get all the facts, I'm good, and then I'm done. No, this is a journey of reflection, and it's a journey of growth.
And I think in some ways it forces us to analyze our own selves and
100%.
what
Oh, yes.
causes us to behave, communicate,
Yes.
or react in a certain way in
Mhm.
different situations. And like you said, that self-reflection is equally important, and that awareness of self as much
Yeah.
as understanding and awareness of others.
You know what's crazy about that is self-reflection sometimes is only possible when we see others, right? Sometimes we don't know. And so that's part of the process. Yes, we need self-reflection, and we need to know ourselves through this process, because we will never, ever know how to deal with differences. And we won't know what bothers us and what doesn't. So we do have to be open enough to discover ourselves. But it's so interesting to see, like, when you leave your group, your little cluster, you start to see, oh, whoa, that's not normal. But you're like, wait, but that's their normal. But it maybe not is my normal, because I have a normal and they don't. And wait, but that's their normal, right? So it's essentially,
so what is normal?
what is normal? Like, what is normal? And so certain things which you see as cultural habits and group behaviors, which, by the way, extends from many different groups. It can go all the way down to the subgroup of the family, to the company. But in this case, we're talking about the national behavior, and how you can apply to business. But so certain this level of culture, what is their normal? And so you need to ask yourself, and that's the cool thing about this journey in a cultural intelligent person, is that you kind of get to step back and like reassess everything in many ways, what is normal, what's not, what's expected, what's not. Okay, I know in this situation that's expected behavior. In this situation, it's not. In this place, it's not. You see what I mean? So you start to become so much more agile, as you go through this journey. And 100%, any leader like wants this, because just like when I went into the wilderness and I was taking students out there, you're dealing with so many different terrain. When you're in the corporate setting, you don't know what you're going to be hit with. And if you take the level of going overseas and dealing with people from all over the world, traveling here and there for them, you have no idea what's going to happen. So we're preparing you to deal with that unknown.
Excellent. Preparation is key. It definitely, preparation is key.
Yeah.
And so how does this cultural intelligence and awareness influence, and I'm speaking from the perspective of a personal stylist, how does it influence personal style in these diverse global environments?
Well, 100%, that's a huge, huge topic. And we talk about that a lot, and I definitely think in our training, like, we're going to go into that a lot more. But personal style really tells people without speaking words who you are, and it's going to communicate a message whether you like it or not, and whether you think it matters or not. So I'm going to give you an example, and I think this is not necessarily the work setting, but it can apply to the work setting too. When you go to a country that's more conservative, you're going to want to be a little bit more aware of how you're covering yourself, because being less covered can say certain things about who you are and what you want. And maybe that's not what's normal in their environment. And that can communicate a negative message that might not help you receive the goals that you want to receive. If you want to make a business deal and someone thinks that you're being a little bit too revealing, they're not going to respect you as much. And that's not something that you can say, well, they should, because I can wear whatever I want. It's not really about that, because you're going into a totally different mindset to what it means to wear certain clothes that are a certain length or reveal certain amount.
Right. And I think you hit on something so important that we discuss in our training as well. Understanding what are your goals.
Exactly.
And how you want your image and style to communicate that so that it serves your purpose.
Yep.
So if I'm pitching to investors in a boardroom, do I want them to take me seriously? Do I want them to perceive me as being intelligent and confident and knowing my stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is my goal to ruffle some feathers, right? It doesn't always have to mean that I'm trying to build a rapport. Maybe it means I'm trying to stand out and make a statement.
Right.
But the idea is that through that awareness, we are able to do it on purpose and not by accident, because by accident is when we get ourselves into trouble and ultimately does not serve us in a professional setting. Does not help us grow our business, right? Do you want to get the promotion? Are you trying to just observe, you know, how things work in a certain corporate environment? Are you looking to make the sale? What is it exactly that you are seeking to establish, and what are your goals? And then that way you can make sure it is being reflected, because it's not uncommon for our image to not be in alignment with our goals. And that's extremely important. And that's what I work with my clients on when they're speaking on stages, when they're, you know, rallying their teams. It's extremely important that they're aware of that, because it goes beyond just looking nice.
100%.
There's actually other factors. And
yeah,
so we
like,
have this presentation. Yeah.
I was going to say, no, just following up with you. Sorry, I like the line, being intentional, not accidental.
Yes. Being intentional, not accidental. So we have our cultural intelligence and style workshop coming up this Wednesday, April 17th, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have an accompanying workbook that we can, you know, give to individuals who are really looking to start on this journey of building cultural awareness and intelligence. If you can very quickly let me know who needs this, why do they need it, and what are they going to walk away with?
All right. So everyone needs this. So everyone needs, no, so, okay. So to be quite honest, anyone that is working in global business, anyone that's traveling for work, they're going to need this. Anyone relocating needs this. Anyone that is working in America in a multicultural team needs this. Because even if we've grown up all American, we still have our influences that we know that we might not even be aware of. So if you're a leader or a team member, to be quite frank with you, but especially our leaders, leaders need to know the human dynamic that we're working with. And so if you have cultural intelligence, you're not only aware of what's going on, you know how to address them and be effective as your leader, as whatever you're trying to do, whatever your goals are. You know? So
really, professionals who are looking to fast track their success, who are motivated and driven to do right by themselves and others, because ultimately this awareness influences everyone on the team. And so, you know, why do we care?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I mean, if you want to succeed, I think we should care because our world is extremely globally connected right now. And whatever industry you're in, if you're in fashion design, wow, that is an international industry. If you are at home in the Washington D.C. area, oh my gosh, just trying to sell your food, like your local food. Hey, you're gonna have everyone from all over the world there. I mean, who knows, like who's gonna show up at your door, you know? So why does it matter? Because you can connect with people and you can actually make that impact that you want to make. Or you can ruffle the feathers if you want to ruffle them. But you have to know it. That's the why, you know, it connects us, it brings us together, or it accomplishes the goal that we want to do. So the more we're able to,
it gives us competitive edge, does it not?
Oh yeah.
If we are able to understand the cultural context in these business settings, it may allow us the opportunity to build a connection more than others. In a way that's really effective. And so definitely, I think competitive edge is something to add as well.
We have a competitive edge. We're able to kind of be a pioneer in forging something new that might not have been there. Sure. And I don't know about you, but the more we have that creativity to find that path or make that path, that's 100% what cultural intelligence is going to do, because it's going to build that connection and it's going to build that relationship and it's going to help you grow and it's going to help whatever situation become better. And now I'm not saying that it's like you're bending over backwards for people. No, because real connection is respect. See? It's authentic. It's authentic. It's authentic and it's respect. So being authentically you is also part of the journey. And becoming culturally intelligent means that you can manipulate this understanding and to your favor, you know? there we go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And so what are we going to learn in terms of culture?
In this training, we're gonna talk about an overview. We're gonna go through what cultural intelligence is and the basic frameworks that you should know and you should do to start getting yourself ready to build cultural intelligence. And then we're gonna go into how to apply that to a specific situation, which we're gonna talk about style and how being culturally intelligent allows you to adjust and modify your style depending on the situation that you're gonna be in. So that's some of the stuff that we're gonna learn. In our course book, we also have a workbook as well, so you can, actually challenge yourself to grow and have practical steps to develop.
And I think it's the practical steps and the tools that we'll be teaching and imparting to everyone, because it's not just, okay, here's some information you need, but what you need to look out for, how you can apply it right away, how it's going to influence your executive image, what you should be looking for when you're determining what to wear, when to wear it, where to wear it. And so all of those things will be able to put it together in a comprehensive way so the individuals tuning in can hit the ground running and really use this as a way to catapult their success moving forward in their careers. And so I look forward to seeing everyone on April 17th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here live on LinkedIn. 2024, everybody. Gosh, the year is flying by. And we hope to see you there and to hear your feedback also. Thank you so much, Claudia, Elias.
Thank you so much, Virtual
Coach. And I am so looking forward to Wednesday.
Yes, me too. We'll see you there.
Bye.
Bye.